came to pass, when the children of Israel were waxing strong, that they put the Canaanites to tribute, but did not utterly drive them out. And the children of Joseph spake unto Joshua. Now this is the children of Joseph, Ephraim and Manasseh. Kind of just call them frat boys. All right? These are just two frat boys. Okay? They said, why hast thou given me but one lot, and one portion to inherit, seeing I'm a great people? For as much as the Lord hath blessed me hitherto, and the word hitherto means up until now, I have been the favored couple up until now, and now you've kind of ruined that gig for me, bud, and we need to get this straightened out so I can be treated like we were treated before. And Joshua answered and said, if thou be a great people, okay, big boy, you're so powerful, then get up to the wood country and cut down for yourself there in the land of the Perizzites and of the giants. If Mount Ephraim too little for you, go to work. Can I tell you, shut up, you're whining, and go get your gloves on. Anyway, we'll get into this. And the children of Joseph said, oh, the hill is not enough for us, and the Canaanites dwell in the land of the valley of chariots of iron. They got bigger guns than we do, and they got woods and da-da-da-da-da. Both they who are of Bethshan and her towns, and they who are of the valley of Jezreel. And Joshua spake unto the house of Joseph, even to Ephraim and Manasseh, saying, oh, you're a great people, right? You're this strong, okay, you're that. You got great power. Thou shalt have only one lot. Hey, you're big and strong. The Lord has given you what the Lord has given you. But the mountain shall be thine, for it's a wood, and thou shalt cut it down, and the outlyings of it shall be thine, for thou shalt drive out the Canaanites, though they have iron chariots, and though they be strong. I love this guy. Some people are born to privilege. They're born to it, and they expect it all of their red carpet lives. Washington is full of people who think we owe them everything. Cadillac health insurance. When they retire, they get a six-figure retirement. Anybody in here retired, you get a six-figure retirement off of that? Y'all have, okay, I didn't think so. They consider themselves the world's privileged and the world's elite. I remember reading a story of the Queen of England, Queen Elizabeth I. She was preparing for a trip years ago, and these royals slay me, by the way. If they have a baby, they want the whole world to come to the nursery and see this baby. And anyway, Queen Elizabeth called for the chariot, the big royal chariot with the horses. And so the driver comes sliding around in front of Buckingham Palace, and he reins these horses to a stop, and the carriage slides to a halt. Queen Elizabeth, as she's stepping into the coach, says to the driver, I almost had to wait. Joseph had two sons, Ephraim and Manasseh. And these boys had the Queen Elizabeth syndrome. Now remember, Daddy Joseph was kind of a big deal in Egypt. You remember that? Second in charge, and what he said went, and everybody bowed down to Joseph. Well, he has two boys that are born into this environment, and whatever Daddy said, these boys got. Now, on one occasion, you recall, Joseph makes a phone call down to Daddy in Israel, and they're hungry, and they don't have any food down there. Egypt's full of food. So ultimately, Joseph talked to Pharaoh and says, I'd like to move my family up here. And Pharaoh says, that's fine, move them up here. And so Joseph, you remember, sent wagons down to Canaan. He gets his family members, 70 of them, loads their briskets up on these chariots or these wagons, and hauls them into Egypt and gave them a really, really, really good region to live in. Very agriculturally verdant, just good places. So, Ephraim and Manasseh, two little snotty-nosed frat boys, These are their dirty cousins. You understand? These are the shepherds. As a matter of fact, my dad saved your dad's life. See, if it wasn't for my dad, you guys would still be living where you were, and y'all wouldn't have anything to eat. So you kind of get where this is coming from. So these boys were raised with this idea of privilege and elitism and all this sort of thing. And throughout the history of Israel, you go back and read, these two boys always had this attitude of superiority. We're better than you are. We're more important than you are. My family we saved your hides. We brought you up here, and you get to live this lifestyle because of us. And so that it just kind of always was that way. Well, once again now, we leave Egypt, all right? We've got the 12 plagues or miracles, depending on if you were a Jew or an Egyptian, trying to define this. But they finally get out of Egypt, and, well, it's going to raise its ugly head again in the book of Joshua chapter 17. The land was being divided, okay? We've got 11 tribes that are going to get real estate. The 12th tribe, the tribe of the priesthood, didn't get any real estate. They got the Lord as their inheritance, and come to find out that was the greatest inheritance of all. But these other tribes were divided up from north to south, and they got their properties with boundaries, and from this creek to that river to that mountain to this down here. And so everybody was happy except Manasseh and Ephraim. I don't care what you do, these boys, they're going to gripe about it. By the way, do you know anybody like that? If you chewed their food for them, they'd gripe about it. Yeah, that's exactly right. And so they were complaining. They come to the old man, and these frat boys now are not happy. Yet the children of Manasseh could not drive out the inhabitants of those cities. Now here was the deal. It's kind of funny. Joshua gets the 12 heads of the tribes together and says, "Look, here's the map." Now you understand that the Canaanites and the Perizzites and all these other Zites weren't going to say, "Oh, it's God's people. Well, certainly you can have our property. We're going to walk away from our houses and our crops. Absolutely. We'll just find other places to live." You understand that's not going to happen. There's going to have to be some force involved here. Somebody's going to have to die, bottom line. And so everybody did. They drove out these inhabitants, and everybody got their property. They were happy with it, except these two. They didn't get enough. They were a great people. So they were historically important. If it wasn't for us, you guys wouldn't even be here. And so they had this elitist, kind of a privileged atmosphere and attitude about them. And so verse number 12, they're complaining, well, the Canaanites are still here. They're not playing nice. What was the instruction to the Jews? Get them out. But they're still here. Get them out. But they won't leave. Get them out. Now, this is kind of hard stuff. Here's the Lord saying, get them out. Kick them out. Now, why? Why would the Lord be so hard-nosed about this issue? Well, number one, I'm grateful that He was. Because could you imagine what would have happened to the DNA of the Jews had it been polluted with Gentile blood? Could we have even had a Messiah come from a pure bloodline? There would have been no Messiah. And so the Lord is protecting us here in 2018 and on and before, that we needed a Savior that was of a pure bloodline. And so he's actually doing them a favor. So, they're complaining. It came to pass when the children of Israel were waxing strong that they put the Canaanites to tribute, but did not drive them out. Well, the mandate was pretty clear. They were told, get them out. Whatever you have to do, get them out. He didn't want them close to this culture because Israel You say, well, what would they have done? They would have absorbed the religions, which they did, and we've gone over that in Ezekiel on Sunday night, how they were like a box of baking soda in your refrigerator. Whatever is stinking in your refrigerator, that's what your baking soda smells like. And so Israel was like this box of baking soda stuck in this culture, and after a while, they smelled like Asherah and Baal and all of these other religions. I mean, it was inevitable, and the Lord did not want that. He could not allow that to happen, so He said just get rid of them. Well, they didn't do that. Now, what did they do? Well, for some reason, these two tribes failed to follow instructions. Do you know anybody like that? They always have a better idea. Did you grow up in a home where maybe one of your siblings always had a better idea? Was that sibling you? You know, mom says do it this way. Well, I'm going to do it this way. The boss says do it this way. Well, I'm going to do it that way. And so you've always got somebody that's got a better idea than you do. And so now we've got a better idea. Let's not drive them out. Let's do this. And so they hand-carved their own plan concerning the Canaanites. Let's don't drive them out, because why would we want to get rid of a source of income? Why don't we just make them pay taxes for living on their own land? And so that's what they decided to do. We'll let them stay because we can't drive them out, but this makes it look like we're the heroes. See, we'll let you stay, but we're going to charge you rent. God didn't tell them, let them stay and charge them rent. He said, get rid of them. Push them out of the land. Well, they didn't do that. And so they did not utterly drive them out. And the children of Joseph spake unto Joshua, saying, why hast thou given me but one lot and one portion to inherit? And they keep throwing this up in his face, saying, we're a great people. I mean, we're two of the larger tribes, and I'm a great people, for as much as the Lord hath blessed me up until this time, and I've come up to you, bud, and you do not recognize our importance. You don't recognize how important we are. You don't recognize how great we are. You're treating us like ordinary Jews. For goodness sake, what is the matter with you, man? And so, verse number 15, Joshua answered and said, well, if you are as great as you say you are, and if you are as powerful as you say you are, thank you for making my case. If you are who you claim to be, go kick them off the land. Push them out. Well, they got iron chariots. Kick them off the land. But there are woods everywhere, and we got just this little tiny open place where we can live, and oh my word, the Canaanites are in the open land, and then there are trees, and Joshua's got an idea. Y'all are great people, right? Yeah, we're a great people. You have saws? Maybe. Well, here's what I suggest you do. I suggest you go, however much property you want. You want more land? Yeah. Then clear it. Get your saws, get your men, have a work day or two, and actually saw the land down. Maybe use the lumber to build houses. How about that? Well, then what about the open area where the Canaanites are? You go drive them out. You're great people, right? You guys are go drive them out. And so you've got an opportunity to have what you are complaining that you don't have. But somebody needs to do it. Now we're starting to see they want what they're not willing to work for. Now, how does that hit you, by the way? Do what? They are used to being served. Exactly right. Now, I think when you study the Bible, we're not just studying history. Matter of fact, Paul said that these things were written, these were historical records that were preserved and incorporated into the Bible. For what purpose? So we could study history? This is for our, I believe the word is admonition. And all that word means is, this is a lesson for you to learn. People don't change, folks. We've got folks in the country that, well, for the first time, let me tell you this, for the first time in U.S. history, and it happened about 5 years ago, we reached a tipping point about 5 years ago, you can actually make more money with potential government benefits than you can in a minimum wage job.
That image of that woman sitting on the road, side of the road after Katrina and saying, the government it's supposed to come and get me.
Yeah.
Like that.
Yeah. Well, now let me ask you a question. Do you think, do what? What do you think would be the answer of a lot of people if they didn't have to work? They could stay home and watch Oprah or whatever's on TV and just go to the mailbox and get checks from the government. And if you need a little more money, all you got to do is find you another daddy baby. Have another baby, and you get another $1,500 a month from the government. Well, you know, that's sort of where we are. We have raised a generation, and Daniel talked about this, mentioned this a while ago. We've raised a generation of, and it's been happening for probably around 40 years, actually. The government owes me. Well, do you realize that the government, number one, it's not a business. The government does not produce a product. It does not produce a service. The only thing that they do, I think the best thing that the government does is the U.S. military. I think that's the best thing that the government does. Everything else scares me to death. Ronald Reagan said one time, the most fearful words in the English language is, I'm from the government, I'm here to help. You know, those are some fearful words for me. And now they're in charge of your health insurance. Aren't you glad that the United States government, who could not even set up the website properly, is now in charge of your brain surgery? And they're going to tell you. Anyway, you know, we're in a culture where I don't want to have to work, but I want a trophy for trying or not trying. If I just show up, I want this participation thing. And I want somebody else to do, and that's where we are. And that's exactly where these guys took us, all right, Manasseh and Ephraim. And so Joshua, he picks up on this attitude and he answers them. I sense some sarcasm here, and I love it. There are all kinds of literary devices. When I teach literature over at the school, we go through these literary devices. And, you know, not everything is literal. It may represent a literal truth. Did you know not everything in the Bible can be taken literally, but it represents a literal truth? For instance, David talked about, you know, we're under the shadow of his wings. Well, that means God's a bird or a chicken. No, that's not what that means at all. That's a truth. That it's a symbolic truth that is representing a literal thing. Does God protect us and hover? Yes. Is he a bird? No. And so you got to know where you are in the Bible to be able to properly interpret, because there are various genres of literature in the Bible. But in this instance, I love Joshua's sarcasm. And he said, oh, and I wish I could see his face, so I'm just going to make it up. You're great. You're great people, right? Yeah. Okay, good. Then go kick them out. If you're so great. But we need, you know, you don't need any backup. The other people are busy setting up their households and building their houses, and you know, this is what you guys ought to be doing. Now, you want to scare some people to death, tell them to get a job. I've had people tell me, I'm talking about young people, I'm talking about 45, 50-year-old people. I've had teenagers tell me, well, I'm not working at McDonald's. Well, why not? I ain't flipping hamburgers for anybody. Okay. Then turn your phone into your mom and dad. You know, make your own car payment. Now, I know that a 16, 17-year-old can't set up a household. I'm aware of that. But they can't. When are they going to learn responsibility to take care of themselves if they don't start while they're under our roof? You know, if we don't teach them that, you think culture's going to teach them that? You think they're going to get that from the school? Here's what I see happening in contemporary American society. As liberalism increases, And I'm not just talking about Democrat, Republican. There are some very liberal Republicans. So I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about as we pull away from biblical values here in this country, people have to be dependent on something for their needs to be met, correct? All right? The money's got to come from somewhere. So as liberalism expands and abscesses like a swelled tooth in the United States, God is slowly being replaced. Well, what's going to take God's place? What do they want to take God's place? Government. Exactly right. So, and you're aware that under any kind of a socialist regime, you remember when Piro spoke to us here just a few months ago? He grew up in a socialist regime in Romania, as did his wife, and he explained the beauty of socialism and why anybody would be attracted to that. I honestly do not know. But at some point under these types of governments, you're going to run out of other people's money, because the producers are going to get tired of having their money confiscated and given to people that are unwilling to work. Exactly. Which is an oxymoron. At some point, somebody's going to want their money back. And we're not going to get deeply into this, but I will tell you that you know who holds most of our debt here in this country? China. You know what would happen if China would call for all their bills to be paid tomorrow? They would. Oh, you're exactly right. All right. Now, there are two reasons, as I read through this, that these two tribes didn't want to do anything. They didn't want to push the Canaanites out. They certainly weren't going to cut down trees. They had the land. They just didn't want to cut the trees down to expose the land. They had all the property they needed, but they did not want to exert any effort to turn that land into agricultural land and whatever they needed. Number one, these are deep theological issues we're about to enter. Number one, laziness. They were lazy. They wanted somebody else to rub their feet. They wanted somebody else to comb their hair. They wanted somebody else to cook their meals. They wanted somebody else to cut their trees down. Well, why can't the tribe of Dan come? Because it's your property.
And they got the east side of the Jordan.
They got the mountain. They got good property. It was there. All they had to do was clear it, but they didn't want to do that. And so they were lazy. We want somebody to come fight these people for us. Really? You really want me to go get some other tribes to come and do what you are supposed to do? So, in life in general, this snake has reared its ugly head back in Joshua 17. This stuff's still going on. I want a phone, but I want you to pay for it. I want a car, but I want you to pay for it. I want this, but I want you to pay for it. Now, are there times when you have to give temporary help? Why, absolutely. Absolutely. But the purpose of help is to get people on their feet. I think that's the most compassionate thing you can do for somebody, is teach them how to take care of themselves. Teach them how to work. And I can't tell you how I respect people that will put themselves out there working hard, long hours, maybe even 2 jobs. How many single moms, maybe even some single dads out there? That's a pretty heavy responsibility to raise kids by themselves, but they do it. They work jobs, they do what they have. You do what you have to do. Won't like that job. I didn't ask you to like the job. I've roofed. I didn't like that. But you know what it did? You know what roofing did? Helped me pay my bills, and it helped me feed my family. It kept my car running. It kept gas in the car. It even every now and then let me go fishing and hunting. I tried it pretty quickly. But actually, we made pretty decent money. But it was hard. I've been bear caught one time in my life, and it was on a roof in Kissimmee in the summertime. Oh, my word. Yeah, and Tommy would not, the boss wouldn't let us use nail guns. He thought that was, yeah, you didn't do that. He was old school because he He said you can't get the pressure set right because it'd blow the nail through the shingle, or you'd have to shoot it, have to hit it with a hammer anyway. Anyway, he just said no. I want everybody. And I was on the roof one day, and I remember I was hammering with my old Est Wing roofing hammer, and just very gently, softly, easily, things faded to black. And I remember just going, and I just fell over on the shingles. And I wasn't there, I don't think, very long. And I came by, I said, oh, wow, this is a rough job. There are some hard jobs out there. There are some jobs, working fields, picking oranges. I'm just telling you, you know what I'm talking about. Laziness will kill you. Solomon talks about this in the book of Proverbs. Said there are people so lazy, said they'll get their fork or their spoon, and they'll put food in their mouth, and they won't even bring their hand to their mouth again. That's pretty lazy, all right? So they were lazy. These little frat boys wanted somebody else to get sweaty for them, wanted somebody else to get sore for them, wanted somebody else to get a wood chip in the eye for them. That's your number two, luxury. Are you kidding? Me? I don't think you understand who I am. Oh, I understand perfectly who you are. You're a Jew. You are a tribe in the Jewish family that has the exact same responsibilities as everyone else. We have a reputation here in this country, around the world, of being a wealthy nation. I was in Africa one time, and I was talking with an African, and he said, here's what we believe about you people in America. He said, we believe that everybody in America has a Rolls Royce, and the poor people hire somebody to wash their Rolls Royce for them. And I'm like, what? No, that you have a really wrong concept of the United States. Do what? Yeah, it's not anything like a lot of people think it is, but it is. And we're among, if you have reliable transportation. Everybody in here have reliable transportation? Well, you will have. Yeah, kind of. You have a roof over your head? You have a bed to sleep in at night? Do you have multiple meals stored in your home somewhere? Refrigerator, pantry? Do you have multiple changes of clothing in your house somewhere? You're in the top 5% of the world's wealthiest people. That's all it takes. The top 5% of the world's wealthiest people today in most countries will be spent gathering food somewhere, maybe in a dump somewhere. I think the Philippines is filled with this. You'll see people going down to the city dump, scrapping for enough food. You know what they're going to do tomorrow? Go to the same place, do the same thing. We got enough food in the refrigerator to last us for days, and more in the pantry. You know what I'm saying? So we live a luxuriant lifestyle, but we don't know it. We're unaware of that. Well, anyway, in Joshua chapter 14, or rather 17, there's oh my goodness. When I read this story, I love what Joshua gives as far as a plan is concerned, all right? And there are two things he said do. Number one, again, theological depth here, cut down your own trees. You cut your own trees down. You want a bike? Yeah. Okay. You mow the yard, and you make enough money, and I'll pay you to mow. You understand what I'm saying? And kids growing up in this atmosphere learn you don't get stuff handed to you. You want something in life, you work for it. Nothing wrong with that. And it's almost like we're abusing our children to require them to work. Some, I don't. You got an 18-year-old that he's not possibly going to have enough money to buy a car. Understand this concept of helping, but just providing for no return of effort at all. This is where these two little frat boys got this idea from. So I'm going to cut your own trees down. You know, I think you should teach your kids to use a washing machine and a dryer. Show them it's really not that hard. Show them how to do it, and let them wash their own clothes. You know, I'm not talking about when they're 2 or 3, and when they're old enough to figure out equipment. Nothing. Don't tell me they don't know. They're the only ones that know how to set the DVR at the house. You want your computer worked on, get your millennial. Yeah, get your 14-year-old. He can do anything on a computer, so don't tell me they can't figure out a washing machine. They most certainly can. Teach them how to fold their clothes and hang them up. Now, this is not real deep biblical stuff, but this is life. This is exactly the lesson being taught in Joshua chapter 17. We've got some hard-working folks in here, and I know the background of some of you. Some of you have been working right out of high school. I think, Sarah, you've been at Wauchula State Bank since you graduated from high school? Almost. So you've been there 5 years. Right? Around 5, 6 years, somewhere in that area. But I'm looking around. You guys work. You work, and you work hard, and God has blessed you. America was built like people that are sitting in this Sunday school class right now. How many of you have, at some point in your life, worked 2 jobs at the same time? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Look. Hands are going up everywhere. How many of you worked on average of 80 hours a week doing what you're doing? One right there. Back here. Here. There. All right. All right. And so it's folks like you that have raised a generation of kids to think like you. And so I appreciate that. So cut your trees yourself, boys. Number 2, fight your own battles. All right? You've got Canaanites out there. Take the initiative. Everybody has enemies, right? Everybody's got enemies. Everybody in here got somebody that doesn't like you. There's something coming against you. It may be a health issue. It may be a financial issue. It may be a marital issue. I don't know what it is. But our battles are our business. If I have a battle of some sort of a temptation, guess who God expects to battle that temptation by applying Scripture to? That's my responsibility. See, God has put that on me. Now, can we as a family work? If somebody needs, you guys are going to move into a new house here pretty soon, and I told you the other night, when y'all get ready to pressure wash and all that kind of stuff, we'll get a bunch of people out there to help you do that, and I'm happy to do that. I think that's a great way to just to get people to join together in issues. Yeah. So, ladies, you have issues that your husband can't fight for you. Men, you have issues that your wife cannot fight for you. These are personal battles that we have to take responsibility for. And God will not fight the battles that He has given us the equipment to fight. You understand? He gave these 2 boys good legs and good arms and good mind. He gave them what they needed. See, the Lord, illustrate again. You got an acorn that big around. How much additional DNA material is required in that acorn to become a 60-foot oak tree? None. It has all it needs. What does it need? It needs some time and atmosphere. It needs to be watered, and it needs to be planted somewhere. But somehow, somebody's got to cooperate with the life force within that acorn, and then in a few years, you're going to have a tree. And so God has given you everything that you need to become what He has designed you to be. What are we waiting on? What are people? Well, I'm expecting the second blessing. There is no second blessing. There may be the second half of the first blessing. I've just not taken advantage. You receive the person of the Holy Spirit at your personal salvation. Your redemptive experience where the Holy Spirit takes up residence within you. What else do we need? And so again, I want to thank you. Several of you are my seniors. Most of you are not. But thank you for showing the rest of us how to do this. how to work, how not to depend on everybody else to take care of you. Thank you for not being Manasseh and Ephraim. Thank you for that. You've handed the baton off to another generation of runners. And I pray we don't drop that baton, and fumble it and raise a generation of kids that want you to do everything for them and citizens who want the government to take care of them. I despise that. I hate socialism. I've never lived under it. I've studied it enough to know that I hate it. I have friends that grew up in that system, and I hate what it did to them. Alina Hutchinson grew up this is Kevin's wife, grew up in Romania, and the Romanian government, when the communists took over Romania, they took their families' home and farm and moved them into a government-built gray concrete apartment house that everybody else had access to, and stole their property. And they were a relatively wealthy family in their culture. But the government said, no, that's ours now. And I despise that kind of thing. I'll fight that stuff until the day I die. And I think probably you will too. But one of the ways to just come against that kind of thing, cut your own trees. Fight your own battles. Nobody's a frat boy. This privileged, elitist kind of a thing. It's a toxin that has been injected into the veins of human culture, and specifically here in the United States, that we could, if you can't stop it, at least we could help curb it in our family, in each individual family. Thank you for being here. God bless you. Thank you all for letting me kind of vent just a little bit this morning, because I just, anyway, thank you. Y'all were patient and good, and so we'll give a popsicle to everybody for that. And now we're going to recognize our nurses this morning and all the work, the stuff. I would not want to be a nurse. Bless their hearts. Thank you so much. I know Nancy was a nurse, and you probably got a bunch of stories you could tell that would further confirm the fact that I'm glad I'm not a nurse. So anyway, we're going to recognize their service this morning. Lord, thank you for your goodness. I pray that you bless our service this morning. We want to honor you. We want to bless your name in music and word, and we're so grateful for the way that you've watched over us. Thank you for those who've chosen to be here today in Jesus' name. Amen.